is because through the indoctrination and the propagation of the religions of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they have taught this good God concept. But the concept doesn't match the actions in the stories, right? So we never analyze why, if God, Allah, El Elo, Elion El, is a being who created the heavens and the earth, created life, created the animals, created the fish, you follow? Did all of those things that they say that occurred in Genesis, then why does this God require man to kill his creation in order to be pleased? Right? These are things that we haven't analyzed. It starts off in that Cain and Abel story where Cain's sacrifice was vegetation. Abel's sacrifice was meat. So that means that Abel, when he offered, killed an animal, and God liked it. He was pleased by it. You follow? Cain brought this vegetation, and God was like, nah, that ain't good enough. You follow? So the God character, this is one of the things that the master teacher explained. He said that really the concept of God was created in the hearts and minds and the authors of these books. And it was born by their creation in their documents. But the real stories, which were copied from ancient stories, are really describing flesh-eating, bloodthirsty beings. Follow? And of which their Messiah character, who they call Jesus, was a descendant of. And he was actually, if you really look at the concept of what they call Jesus, he is a representation of a human sacrifice. So in the religious teachings, you going from a God who says, okay, I will accept animal sacrifices to please me, to saying, I will accept this human sacrifice to please me. So there's a shift, because we don't analyze certain things in the Bible. We don't analyze the Lord's Prayer, as they call it.
Well, my question, my deeper question to this
Go ahead.
Is I was taught that Jesus was after the order of Melchizedek.
Mm-hmm.
You know, going back through Abraham's seed and all the way back through the bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, if he was a reptilian, then how could he be after the order of Melchizedek?
Well, you got to remember that the teachings of Jesus being after the order of Melchizedek is something that is taught in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, by a character who is known as Paul,
Okay.
who is attributed to writing most of the books of the New Testament. You follow? And in these teachings or writings of Paul, he is the leading author of these books, and he is the one who has basically opened the door for what they call Gentiles to accept these certain teachings. But what he really did was alter the entire teachings of this character that they call Jesus altogether, and created this whole new doctrine called Christianity. And what you have to remember, that Christianity in itself is a combination, as is taught today, of the Hellenistic teachings of the Greeks and the Romans and the teachings of the so-called Israelites, to create this new God character, Jah from the Israelite God, and Zeus from the Greeks. Jah, Zeus. And if you really look at the picture of Zeus and look at the picture of Jesus, you see that they are very similar in appearance. You follow? So that whole story, again, is going back into getting you caught up, because that Jesus character that they've created is to really get you to surrender your soul, your will over to them, so eventually you become the food for the gods. That's the whole purpose of that story. So you as a person are a willing sacrifice to be washed in the blood of the Lamb. You follow? You go to, in their religious practice, you have that Eucharist, you have that, that symbolically you eating the wafer and drinking the wine And symbolically, it's supposed to represent you eating the flesh and drinking the blood of Jesus. And the question is, what really is this talking about? You follow? You are symbolically eating a person and drinking their blood. And we do this and accept it as if it's okay. I'm going to symbolically eat Jesus' flesh and drink his blood. Follow? So we don't really analyze these things that we're taught. You follow what I'm saying?
So was Yahshua truly after the order of Melchizedek? I mean, the real story or the real history behind it.
Well, these are the one of the things that the master teacher explained. See, because the bottom line is the story of the Messiah that's taught throughout the New Testament never existed.
Never existed.
The whole story, you got to remember, as he explained, that there were many Messiah types that existed before this character that they created in the Bible. You follow? The story that they have is a combination. Remember that when you're talking about the stories of the New Testament, many of them were written at least 20 years after this man supposedly lived. You follow? And it's very improbable to create an accurate story of a man who existed 20 years, and many of the authors never even met him.
Okay. So how can they mark AD and BC if nothing actually took place, like before Christ or after death? Like, how do they mark that time if then there was no crucifixion that actually took place?
Well, that's the whole thing, because many of them, even in their story, they don't know when he was born. You follow? They just know that certain events took place during that time, according to the story. But the actual date, they don't know, according to what they're taught, because it was a mystery, it was a secret. And only certain men who were able to follow the stars were able to know that at a certain time, this certain being was born. You follow? So the creation of that AD and BC was something that they just did. Okay. It wasn't something based on an actual time or event that was accurate in that sense. You follow? All right, no problem. Any other questions?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I was just curious about the Christmas tree.
Well, one of the things what we do in our practices, we acknowledge the fallacies of the Christian and the Christmas holiday. You follow? But what we do as Nuwaupians is practice what is called Children's Day. Because we, as living in this society, if you deprive your children of certain things that are in the world, they'll feel they miss something. You follow? So in order to avoid that, we give them that saying, because as a child, if you recall, as a child, you didn't care nothing about Santa Claus, really.
No, it was just the gifts.
It was all about the gifts. It was all about the presents. So what we've done, or what our master teacher has done, is as the reformer, as the renewer, he has given that holiday a new meaning for us. So it can relate to us, and then our children won't be deprived of the things being in the world, but not of the world.
We have an online question from a brother named Eldridge Alston. He wants to know, why do Nuwaupian women refer to their braid as a ninti braid when ninti is an Anunnaki, not Nadaru?
Okay, the ninti braid was a title that we used before, right? And certain of the Patarak, it was actually referred to as a side lock. And you may also hear it as an asset braid. You follow? So the ninti braid, again, is something that we use during that school of time, or that school of thought. Now it's referred to as a side lock or an asset braid.
Okay. This question is coming from just a brother named Gordon, he calls himself. And he wants to know, he said, seeing that every 25,000 years a warning has been sent to us, does that mean that when this kind of world has come to an end and real peace is amongst us on the earth again, He wants to know, would it still be necessary to be given a warner?
Will it still be necessary to be given a warner?
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Again, as cycles of time, everything happens in cycles. You have your day, you have your seasons. All of that happens in cycles of time, where cycles of chaos and cycles of order. And every 25,000 years, we go through new cycles. So there's a cycle of time where the order has to give way to chaos. And during that chaos, a warner is sent to bring things back into order. You follow? So it's likened into winter and summer. When the winter comes, the leaves fall off the tree. You follow? The vegetation desists until that springtime comes and the summer comes and new life and new things are reborn. You follow? So that's what you're dealing with. That those 25,000 years of cycles of time, a warner is sent because we are going from chaos back to order, from a moon cycle back to a sun cycle.
Okay. All right, this next question is from Stephen Cole. He says, what is meant by 2030, life as we know it will change? He wants to know what's supposed to happen. I think he's referring to the Holy Tablets when Pop said 2030 will be the last time they come and pick us up.
I don't know. There are certain things that we have to, we haven't been revealed everything. You follow? The master teacher, as the guide, has given us things that we need in this day and time. And based on certain questions, he reveals more information. Now, as far as what happens at 2030, I don't know. The reality is that we have to be prepared and transform even before then. That's the goal, should be the goal of everyone, to be transformed from mortal to God, to be ready to be received by our Natharu, by those beings from which we came. So it's about being ready.
Okay. Stephen Cole asked, he said, can you explain again how whites, Tamahus, came into being and how long ago? I know they were Dravidians who Adam and Eve were, but at what point? And how did they turn white? Because some people say it was from the climate, and I know that's not true.
Well, what you have to remember is that the creation of the Caucasian, or the red ruddy race, is a product of different extraterrestrial genes. We as beings who were originally here and created and grew in the continent of Africa are the original inhabitants of this planet. You had different extraterrestrial beings that came. The Bible refers to them as angels. You're right? Certain different religious doctrines all describe beings coming from the stars or coming from the heavens to the planet. The problem is that in those certain religious schools, they just describe them as spooky apparitions. But the reality is that all cultures and societies describe these beings coming down from somewhere. The reality is that these were physical beings in many instances. And these physical beings came down and bred with the beings that were already here. So you had certain beings that bred to create what is known as the Hindu, which is a dark-skinned, straight-haired being. You follow? And from the Hindu or the Dravidian was bred an albino stock who became your Caucasian. Now, it's interesting. You can look it up. The largest family of albinos is actually Hindu or East Indian.
Okay.
Right. They have like about 7 to 9 people in that one family who are all albino. You follow? What the master teacher explained is that the albino seed actually manifests in all races. You follow?
All creatures also.
Right, as well as all creatures. So the albino seed which is really a genetic mutation that came about by way of the beings who are from Pleiades, right? The Pleiadians, who are the beings who are described as the Nordics, who are the same beings that encountered Hitler. Now Hitler, if you look at research Hitler, he described the supreme race as blonde-haired, blue-eyed.
Yeah,
Follow? But he wasn't blonde-haired, blue-eyed. So how did he get that idea that supreme race? Because those are the extraterrestrial beings that came to him. And his process, he was trying to graft that supreme race. So when you have the Hindu, from the Hindu was grafted the Flugerot, also known as the Neanderthal.
Okay.
You follow? That was again, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed being who was grafted out of that Hindu stock. You follow? And eventually they came into being and grafted into what is known as the Canaanite by way of a being known as Wu-nuwaup or Zoroastrians, right? And that grafted, he was actually the first. When it says that he was perfect in his generations, it's because he was actually the first being who was born pure albino.
This is the one that's related, the same character as the biblical Noah, right?
As the biblical Noah, exactly.
Okay.
So when that being known as Noah, when it says that he was perfect in his generations, he was the first being who was perfected in terms of that Pleiadian seed being grafted into the Adamite.
Okay.
Right? And from him came your different breeds of Caucasians. Right? The Caucasian came by way of that. But all of this was different genetic experiments from mixing in the earthly being with that extraterrestrial seed. And about it, and if you look at it, there are many deformities that came about as a result that are still in our genes.
Okay. Do you know any of some?
Well, there are different beings who are born with, for instance, 6 fingers, 6 toes. You have, especially amongst the Hindus, you have different beings who are born with multiple limbs and things of that nature. Siamese twins, things of that nature. Those are different results of this mixing. You follow? Because in our pure state, a woman actually is supposed to produce twins.
Okay.
She's supposed to produce twins. That's why she has 2 breasts or 2 mammary glands for the suckle on.
Okay.
Right? Again, because of crossbreeding, because of mixing in, a lot of the way we were supposed to mate, we're out of whack, we're out of tune. And these are part of the things that even the master teacher is trying to introduce with the science of, for instance, genetic kiss. You follow? We're trying to get back into the science of producing the optimum genetics from our procreation, okay, as opposed to just having sex for pleasure. All right. And oops, the baby come. You follow? There is a whole science to how we're supposed to mate, because we're just a whole lot of whack. This is how we have so many different personalities, because we haven't realized that we as beings are affected by not only our sun, but all of the suns called stars that shine upon this planet.
Wow. This
is the whole science of what they call the zodiac. We understood it as solar biology. We understood it as from the Dendora, that at certain times of the day, of the year, there are certain energies that are hitting the sun, and as melaninite beings of melanin, this energy is absorbed and affects our being.
Wow.
Thus spawns the different personalities called your zodiac each month, each cycle. You follow? So in that mating, you as a being are born under a certain astrological sign. But you are also the same astrological sign, or affected by the astrological sign of your parents, and as well as their parents, going back 4 generations. So in order to breed that perfect personality, certain beings have to come together. In our ancient culture, people were brought together by certain priests, and they were told to mate at a certain time to produce, the optimum genetics.
Perfect child. Okay.
You follow?
Yeah.
So again, there was a whole science to mating. There was a whole science to procreation that we have gotten long away from, and that our master teacher is slowly getting us back.
All right. Okay. This next question is coming from someone named Dante York, and he asks, is the Christian God real? If he isn't, explain to me how.
Well, yes and no. The Christian God that we have been taught to worship isn't who we think he is. The way they teach it, it's not real. But what they're teaching you is to follow beings who eventually are going to eat you.
Wow.
So this is what I mean. When you read, for instance, again, as the master teacher is revealing now that the beings who we call God, or the being that we call God in your Bible, is really more than one being, right? He revealed years ago that in many instances where they translate the word God, it's actually the word Elohim, and that's a plural word. When it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The word God there is plural. It's talking about a group of beings. Okay. So when you're reading out through the Bible, throughout the Bible, there are instances where one being is talking, and then there's instances where another being is talking. It's all lost in the language. Follow? So when you get to the point where you're talking about Leviticus, for instance, right? And this is what I was touching on earlier, is that we don't read the book for what it really is saying. Because Leviticus in itself is telling you how God or these beings like their cuts of meat. You follow? It's telling you what cuts of meat to use and place upon the altar, what to do with the blood,
wow,
where to sprinkle it. You follow? And if you really read it, I challenge anybody to go home and read Leviticus chapter 1 through 10 and tell me that it doesn't sound satanic.
Sound like a recipe, right?
You follow? I'm just do it. Don't believe me. As our master teacher says, don't believe me. Check it out for yourself. The reality is that these are describing an act of what you're supposed to do with the meat. Cut it up. No, I don't like that part. I want a fresh bullock. You follow? I want one without blemish. I want you to, I want you to take it, cut it up. I want the hind parts and things of that nature. And it sounds like a recipe where this God is saying, this is what I like to eat, and this is how you cook it. Wow. Follow? And you put it upon the altar, and it creates a smoke, and God smells the sweet savor of it. You follow? And then he's pleased. You have atoned for your sins.
It's like when you walk in the neighborhood and somebody's barbecuing, you can smell it a block away.
Right. You smell like barbecue. You smell the sweet savor of the barbecue. Okay. You follow? And you start salivating a little bit. It's like, look, but the point is that the character that we've been taught through the propagation of these religions isn't really the character that is described in the text. Okay. So, to answer the question, is the Christian God real? He's not real the way they teach it, but he's real in terms, because the God that they really want you to worship really is a devil. Okay. And this is a clear example. This is what the master teacher is explaining as a master linguist. You follow? To understand the language of the scriptures, because in the beginning was the word. That word wasn't in English. You follow? So we have been taught to refer to God as the Almighty. Right? Right. The Almighty in the Aramaic Hebrew language is El Shaddai. Okay. Right? Right. El Shaddai is, again, through what they created as Yiddish, when you go back to Aramaic, the Aramaic, it is actually 3 Hebrew letters, right? Shin, Delef, and Yod for Shaddai.
Okay.
Now, the Yiddish, they put all these little fancy dots and things of that nature, which didn't exist in the original language.
Yeah.
Follow? So those 3 letters, right? The Yod at the end of a word actually creates possession, right? The example is, according to what we've been taught, Matthew chapter 27, verse 46, the Messiah is supposedly on the cross, and he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, right? Which is supposed to mean, my God, why hast thou forsaken me, right?
Right.
Now, Eli is El with a Yod at the end of it, right? So El becomes Eli, which means my God. El with the Yod. Shaddai is Shad with a Yod at the end of it. Now, what does the word Shad mean? Anybody know?
Demon or something like that?
It means demon. So when you're saying Al Shaddai, you're saying my demon.
Wow.
And this is what you've been worshiping without knowing it. You've been worshiping a bloodthirsty, flesh-eating being who really, if he gets the opportunity, is going to eat you.
No, that's interesting because you just explained 2 questions in one, because the second question is actually dealing with what you just said, because the second question says, how can someone devote their life to a belief system that they have no proof of any of it is real? So that just ties into that, because they're
right.
actually...
Well, see, religion teaches belief, right? Because what the master teacher explains is that you can believe something 100% wrong. You follow? You can believe anything.
Believe in a lie that don't make it
You can believe in a lie that doesn't make it true. How strong you believe it, it doesn't make it true. So religion teaches you literally blind faith, where there's no confirmation, there's no proof, you just accept it, and that's it.
Wow.
So what the master teacher teaches is that you live by faith as opposed to faith. And what is faith? Faith in our ancient languages is called qadar, right? And it's dealing with really cause and effect. Follow? It's dealing with certain realities. We know that if you, in your life, there are things you learn just by experience.
True.
Follow? You learn things that, okay, if I do this, this is going to happen.
Yeah,
You follow?
all right.
So if I want the whatever outcome, if I want that to be positive, I do this. If I don't like that outcome, I won't do that.
Common
You
sense.
follow? It's common sense. You follow? And you understand that in living your life, you sow those seeds of faith by your actions. It's not something blind. So as a scientist, you learn to analyze what it is that you're doing so that you can get the optimal result. Now, as the brother Harpatar Sar was explaining earlier, we have a guide. And a guide has laid out a way, patarak, for us. And following that way produces the optimum results for not just you as an individual, but for collectively as the Nagaru Salau, the Negroid race.
All right.
You follow?
Wow.
So, because this is what we don't realize, you know, in light of the current events in places like the city of Ferguson, we haven't mastered as a whole that cause and effect. We still think that this society, this country, which is rooted in racism. What do I mean by rooted in racism?
Built on it.
The Constitution is a racist document. It didn't include you. You follow? The country is rooted in racism. You follow? They had to, as the master teacher explained years ago, that if they had to have amendments to include you, meaning you wasn't a part of the original.
It makes sense.
You follow? So we keep expecting this society, which is racist in nature, not to act racist. How crazy is that? And not only that, when they do act racist, we appeal to them to fix it.
Please help us.
You follow? And it's crazy. Like, many of our people, especially our youth, they'll do something like, you step on their Jordans, they want to fight and kill you. You follow? So they're like, you step on their Jordans, they Nino Brown. You follow? But if a police officer kills another black youth, now they Martin Luther King. And they want to march and we shall overcome.
Isn't that interesting?
You follow?
Yeah.
And the reality is that we haven't mastered that cause and effect. We still putting our fate in someone else's hands as opposed to taking control of our own destiny.
And it's sad because it's like the master teacher said, we don't need them, they need us.
Exactly.
And everything we need is in Africa. They got big cities, everything we need is there. We're just afraid to leave them.
Exactly. We think that we can't survive without the Caucasian. When the reality is they can't survive without us. They need us to fuel their society. This is a simple analogy. If you work a job and they pay you $100,000 a year, in order for them to justify your $100,000 a year, you have to be making them at least $200,000.
At least.
To justify paying you $100,000. They have to profit off of your labor in order for them to justify your salary. Right. We actually perpetuate our own demise because we fuel the industry, the governments, all of those things that are designed to suppress us.
Wow.
And this is why the master teacher explained that the message of the messenger was all wise, right, and exact. That messenger being the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the greatest black man to be born on the shores of North America. He explained that his message of do for self was all wise and right and exact. You follow?
Wow.
This is why the master teacher is explaining, or is becoming evident, that he is the continuation of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings.
True.
You follow? But we are so up under the spell of the Caucasoid and the comfort that he provides. Going things that master teacher say, he said, we love the devil because he gives you nothing. You follow? And we just don't realize how much that we can do for ourselves. Yes. He explained that building of Tamaray, Egypt of the West, the city in Eatonton, Georgia, that the master teacher constructed was an example of how we build elaborate societies. We don't build ghettos.
I think that kind of ties into that, the Black Wall Street in, I think, was it?
Exactly, in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma, where they had everything, they had millionaires, they didn't need them for anything. And
exactly.
Caucasians have to destroy that because they can't have a model for everybody else to see, like, we don't.
Exactly. There can't be examples. So they have to remove Dr. Malachi Z. York. They have to destroy a Tamaray because of what it represents in the hearts and minds of the people. You follow? We don't realize that we aren't liberated. We think that, okay, I can work the same job as the Caucasian. I've arrived.
But you don't get paid the same.
You follow? So we can't, this society, this government isn't designed for us. You follow? You know, the foundation of the United States, the foundation of Georgia where we are, was all built on racism.
And it's sad we don't know that. The majority of us don't know it or won't accept it.
Right. And until we accept our authority, till we realize that they are not going to give us anything to make us equal or better than them.
Because they lose power.
Right, they lose power. They don't, see, this is such the fear. This is why President Obama has been given so much flack on everything he's attempted to do. You follow? They are literally, the day he was elected, they were designed to, they planned that I don't care what he does, we're going to go against it. Literally, they even said, they even openly said it.
We can't have that nigga succeeding.
Right, so they don't want it's not just, you know, that it's what President Obama represents that they're trying to stop because of the image. That's the master teacher explained that one of the most important verses in the Bible was Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, where it says, let us make man in our image and after our likeness.
Okay.
What the Caucasian wants to do is create you as Nagaru, as black people, as Africans in the image and after the likeness of the Caucasian.
Seems like it's working.
So therefore, if you're in their image and likeness, all you're going to do is promote and perpetuate their system.
Okay. Father, this next question is coming from Naeem Sharif. He says, "Hats up, sir. The master teacher Panabab Yanun said in one of the updates that our Tamarian Salafu exiled the Dogon Salafu from out of Tamaray. Why were the Dogons exiled out of Tamaray?"
I don't know. I don't know. I would have to confer with the other student teachers to see if that answer was given by a master teacher. I don't know that question. I remember that the master teacher explained in the update that they were exiled, but for what reason, I don't know. I don't recall.
All right. This one is from somebody called Calvin Berman. I don't know if you know this. He says, what species of gray was krill, and how did they grow to such a degree that they were allowed to work on the 24 elders' behalf?
What species? I don't remember the master teacher revealing that, what
yeah.
species he was.
But I do remember what he said about why they created the grays, though.
Right. The grays were what he referred to as extraterrestrial biological entities who were used to probe different parts of the galaxy.
Scouts and stuff like that.
Scouts to go in and research, probe, and find out information about various places in the universe. So they were like used by the different extraterrestrials as scouts.
Okay. This person here, Kevin Gray, wants to know, said, do you know when they'll be releasing the Bigfoot book?
No, I can't answer that question.
Like,
but it'll be coming. There are actually a lot of books that will be coming very soon. And you just have to be patient, you have to be diligent as a student, and prepared that when it does come out, you get your copy.
Okay. All right. This brother named Orton Gordon has some questions from the Is There Eternal Life After Death book.
Okay.
He has 12 questions, but we won't be able to get all of them. The first one he said is based on page 12. He said, in the scroll, it stated that the Most High, Elyon El, can't become physical. However, the other angelic beings can. Why is that? If he's the one who's responsible for their creation in the first place.
When you're talking about certain beings, there are certain beings who are known as a master teacher revealed, as Etherians. You follow?
Right.
And these certain beings, they do not incarnate, right? There are some that do. There's some that do not incarnate. And there are certain angelic beings who, what the master teacher explained are, you have what are called extraterrestrial beings, and you also have what are called interdimensional beings. There's some beings who are extraterrestrial, meaning physical, like you and I, and then there's some beings who are on a higher vibration interdimensionally who don't incarnate into the flesh.
Okay.
You follow? So, in many different instances, our creation came about by way of extraterrestrial as well as interdimensional beings. We are, there's a physical part to us, there's an etheric part to us, there is a soul part to us, you follow? So
Right.
we have many different aspects to our being, to our creation as a result,
Okay.
you follow?
Right.
So certain beings are, again, sent here by way of other extraterrestrials, other interdimensional beings, and there are spiritual beings who come by way of interdimensionally to this planet as well. You follow?
Right. Okay. His next question is, he's asking about the 144,000. He said, based on the illustration, 12 times 12 agreeable, 144, 12 times 12 disagreeable, 144 times 1,000 angelic beings. Does this mean that the 144,000 will be comprised of both agreeable and disagreeable beings?
Well, what you have to understand is that the book Is There Eternal Life After Death was written in a certain period of time. And a lot of it was explained from the standpoint of religion. You follow? When you're dealing with the 144,000, again, that is a number that comes out of the book of Revelation, which deals with certain beings that were supposed to be saved. What the master teacher explained is that 144,000 were actually a group of beings that were taken up by way of extraterrestrials who were the ones responsible for that Bible, who came in the city of Nome, Alaska. And this, he said, this was depicted in the movie known as The Fourth Kind.
Yes.
You follow? So again, those different things were explained because as the master teacher, he had to walk us through certain schools because there are certain levels of information that we weren't ready for because we were so indoctrinated by the Caucasian and his society and his mentality. You follow? So he had to walk us literally through the schools and through them and out of them in order to get to this point.
It's interesting you mentioned that movie, The Fourth Kind, because he recommended people watch that movie.
Correct.
Because it was an actual event that happened.
Correct.
You know, they didn't really push that. They're trying to suppress it, but, you know.
Right. And with that, I'd like to pass the class to my brother, Hadar Patar Asar.
It's one of the reasons why we say to family to bring paper and pen, of course, so you can take down notes. Hopefully you'll remember to look at this movie. If you hadn't seen the movie and you don't remember it ever being advertised, there's a reason for it. But in this movie, they have actual footage of the abductions.
Yes, The Fourth Kind.
Actual footage, not...
It's an excellent movie.
And action, take 37. And no, it was not takes. There was actual footages in that movie.
Okay.
Take your time to watch it.
Warren Gordon's next question is, gives a quote. He said, if you're young and are involved in acts of wrongdoing, you should try to grant an extended chance to amend for your ways and atone for your evil actions and pray for old age as a chance to cool off and start over again, etherically. So is this statement suggesting that no matter what grave atrocities one might have done in their youth, they can still cleanse their soul while old?
Yes, and here's why I'll say that, because our master teacher explained, yes. He explained to us that old age gives you a time to rest from the negative or the disagreeable ways in life that you lived. Those of us, all of us that did, and each one of us right now are reflecting back to that dumb thing you did or that dumb thing you're still doing if you're that young one. As a result of that, we do have that point in time when you go from knowledge, you knew you shouldn't have did that. But damn, it was fun. Follow you did it because it was fun, or you did it because you was dared, or you did it simply because you was stupid. End result is old age grants you that time to sit on the porch, to sit in your chair at home, to stand outside and water the grass, and to just look at life go by and think, oh, when I used to do that. Those dumb things. It gives you time to slow them down and make right out of the wrong that you either did, and to look back on them and make amends for them, as well as make the decision because you're now wiser. You knew, but you look back at the consequences of that which you knew, the fate that brought you, And you now being wiser, don't make dumb decisions, wise, dumb, wisdom. You now look back and in the degrees of wisdom you have, you are now wise and you say, I won't make that decision again. And old age has a way of doing that. Oftentimes it takes, our master teacher explained to us, he said sometimes it takes getting in a car accident, hanging off the side of a cliff, getting shot in the head and don't die. Sometimes it's that drastic. Sometimes it takes simply waking up in the morning and realizing that the world is heavy and I got to make a change. And some people do that. And our master teacher explained to us that old age grants you the time to do that. It's one of the purposes. He says, so pray that you live a right old age, to give you time to stop from those, so that those disagreeable things that you would be doing as you age, you cease to do them, and your agreeable outweighs all the disagreeable you did. You follow? With that, it also states that his purpose, of course, again, for coming, because our master teacher explained, someone asked him a question, a female I remember, asked him a question, what makes him a master teacher as opposed to just a teacher? Okay. And he says, I'm a master teacher because I've mastered the spiritual realm, 360, and I've mastered the physical realm, 360. He says, and as a 720 being, he says, I have the ability as a master teacher to teach you and to answer questions that have been unanswered since the beginning of time on every subject under and now above the sun. The simple question, which came first, the chicken or the egg, our master teacher answered that in depth perfectly.
I remember that class vaguely.
You remember that? So he explained to us that as a master teacher, he says, there's a statement that he coined. He says, we have to take a long walk on a short path. And he explained to us what that meant, saying that for that short amount of time that we have, the long walk on a short path, the long walk was the amount of information that we had to learn. Having been for the last 6,000 years being lied to, he says, I was given a period of 30 years to actually teach us right knowledge. Now, let me explain that, because that don't mean because that 30-year period is up. That was a period of time to get us out of that religion nonsense. That was not as is now. 30 years is now continuous. No, that was for a certain period of time. He had to break that spell of religion. We don't believe your God anymore. We don't believe your Jesus and your Bible and Quran anymore. We don't want your Muhammad or your angels in your heaven and hell no more. It's not that we don't believe in your God. We don't believe in your God or your devil. Both of them are wimps. Neither one of them. So what happened is that part of the spell has been broken. What occurs is that, as he explained that we came to take a long walk on a short path, he said the short path was the amount of time we had to do it. He said, so given the amount of time that I had to get this job done, and the amount of information and information that he had to give to us, he said, as a master teacher, I have to give you all 10 years worth of information every year that went by.
Wow.
He said, so as a master teacher, I had to figure out how to assimilate all of this knowledge, all this information into your head and reactivate brain cells and recalibrate DNA. You follow, have DNA explosions. He says, without turning you into a vegetable. He said, because what you can do to any computer is you can actually shut a computer down if you download too much information in it. True. He says, so what happened is that if he was coming to teach us how to become chefs or cooks, then he could teach us, if he was a chef or cook, 100% about that. Or if he was teaching auto mechanic, he would come, if you wanted to learn how to become a mechanic, he could teach you how to become a mechanic. He says, I am God. And to make you gods again, I have to give you God information. So he said, as I gave you information, I have to figure out how to, while teaching a crowd of people, hundreds of thousands of people, he says, I have to activate your brain cells and recalibrate your DNA, being the reformer. He says, I have to do that without shattering your brain cells and turning you into a vegetable. So I have to be able to say certain words with certain tones in it that will activate you but not shatter her brain cells. Wow. And then say certain things that activate her but not shatter his brain cells. And say something to activate you all without shattering their brain cells. He says, and that makes him a master teacher, having successfully and still gradually causing us to transform from mortals to immortals, from humans to God. You follow? Wow. So this is the task that he has of that. So as far as their time, he says, here's what you do. He asks a person if they had a mate. He told them, he says, you have a mate? But he said, take your mate, or if you don't, go out individually. He says, and look out at the stars at night and look up into the heavens and see how insignificant you are.
I remember that.
You remember that? He says, see how insignificant you are in comparing yourself to the stars, to the heavens. He says, then go out in the daytime, he says, and look at an ant bed and watch the ants scurry around. He says, and see how significant you are on the other hand. He says, and put yourself somewhere between insignificant and significant, and you realize there's still hope. There's still chance from what you were or and could have been to what you are, towards what you are becoming. And that lets you know there's hope. He also explained to us that because you are a 3/4 water being, and it goes from solid, liquid to gas, he says, being that you're 3/4 water, and you can't become any more dense than you already are, any more solid than you already are. He says, then your journey is toward the gases or the spiritual state. Right. Having passed the liquid, solid, passing the liquid, he said, your journey is towards a spiritual state. So there is hope. There is a chance.
You know, it's funny you say that because I remember he elaborated a little bit more on the putting yourself in between the stars and the ant. He said when you look at it, he said to an insect, said, we are immortals because the insect's life is so short. He said, by the time they died, he said they would have went through many generations, you would have still been here, just like a fly, because a fly's life is like a few weeks and they die. They reproduce fast. He said, but you will still be here long after they're gone. He said to the insect, you are an immortal.
You're immortal, right.
You look at the higher beings up there who have lifespans longer than us, we think they're immortal. Like Anunnaki said, 1,000 years to them is one day to us. He said because they have a long lifespan, so to us they would be immortal. But
I remember he
said
that.
They die also, just like we die in the ant.
He said they die also.
It depends on the perspective of where you are. So he said place yourself somewhere in the middle, and you'll see how great you are and how significant you are at the same time.
Right.
So that was good.
And therefore there's hope. Yeah.
All right. This next question is coming from someone named R. Scott. He said, hi to the family. My name is Rashad Scott from the Bahamas. There's a brother by the name of 13th Son on YouTube, and he said that he's the master teacher's brother. And also he said that Dr. York said that, and I quote, there will be more that will come smarter than him. My question is, do you know of this brother, and is the master teacher the last messenger sent to us?
I'm going to make that answer real straight and direct. For starters, no, I do not know him. Secondly, in answering the question, no, there's no other reformer being sent after him. There's no other guide being sent after him. There is no one smarter on this planet than him. Now, I know that's going to sound a little bit like my opinion because a lot of people like to think my daddy's smart, my daddy real smart. My mom was smarter than him. My mom went to college and she got a degree in science, applied sciences, and no, that's not what we mean. We mean this particular being, our master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z. York, is recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records as a man that's written